All right, so it is now 3, so I think we're going to get started. So, hi everyone, welcome to today's Youth AI Talk, and we're very excited to see so many new faces this afternoon, and we thank you for joining us even though this is, I know, a busy week for a lot of people. Before introducing today's speaker, I'd like to first share some of Youth AI's previous talks and upcoming talks. Since the kickoff of the Youth AI speaker series in mid-August, we've had the opportunity to host 7 great talks so far, covering topics such as efficient AI, autonomous robotics, graphics in AI, AI and AR, ethics in AI, and AI and its implications. Replays of these talks are available on our YouTube channel, with the exception of Dr. Ronho's talk, which is not available on YouTube due to company policy. Now I'd like to introduce some of our upcoming talks. On November 7th, Dr. Xiaodong Huang will share Microsoft's AI journey to help everyone and every organization on the planet achieve more and communicate better. He'll share the AI tools and projects Microsoft has been working on and what skill set Microsoft expects from its future employees in the AI field. He is a Microsoft Technical Fellow and the Chief Technology Officer of AI Cognitive Services. On November 21st, we will host Dr. Olaf Groth. His talk will focus on data, the new oil in the age of AI. Come join us and help define the next frontier of digital growth ethically and equitably. Dr. Groth is a professor, advisor, and executive for the evolving global innovation economy with 20 years of experience in corporations, consulting firms, and academia. He has helped build new ventures and change management initiatives for employers and clients in many industries in over 30 countries. Dr. Groth is co-author of Solomon's Code, Humanity in a World of Thinking Machines, and of the forthcoming book, The Great Remobilization, Reinventing the Post-Pandemic World. On December 13th, we will host Dr. Li Deng. His talk will focus on speech AI and finance AI. Dr. Li Deng joined Citadel, one of the most successful investment firms in the world, as its chief AI officer in May of 2017. Previously, he was chief scientist of AI and partner research manager at Microsoft. He is an affiliate professor at the University of Washington in Seattle, a fellow of the IEEE, the Acoustical Society of America, and the ISCA, as well as a fellow of the National Academy of Engineering in Canada. Free registration for these 3 talks is open. You're welcome to register, and I'd also like to mention that we will start to offer free ML peer-to-peer mentoring on November 21st. Please sign up at our Youth AI website at youthai.org as a member, and you'll receive details about these training opportunities. I'll now turn it over to my co-host, Alex Turk.
Hi, I'm Alex Turk, as Jeffrey just said, and I'm the co-host for today's event. So if you're hoping to keep up to date with information about our upcoming events, please follow our social media linked here and in the Zoom description and YouTube description. Before introducing Prof. Vardi, I'd like to briefly just go over the logistics of the talk. So we'll change the format of the talk, the question answer section at the end to make it more interactive. At the end of Prof. Vardi's talk, participants in the Zoom meeting will have the opportunity to use the virtual hand raise function and ask questions directly. So for audience members watching from our YouTube live stream, you may ask questions through a platform called Slido, and the link is here. So either go to the URL provided in the chat, or if you go to Slido, and enter the event code 97640, you can find that. Please feel free to submit questions throughout the talk, but we'll only be answering questions in a QA session at the end of Prof. Vardi's talk. So now let me briefly introduce today's speaker, Prof. Moshe Vardi. We are very grateful to have him here today to discuss the relationship between humans, machines, and work. Prof. Vardi is a renowned mathematician and computer scientist. He's a top expert in automated reasoning and a professor of computer science at Rice University, where he leads the Technology, Culture, and Society Initiative. Prof. Vardi is a member of the U.S. National Academy of Engineering, the National Academy of Sciences, and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the European Academy of Sciences, and Academia Europaea. He's a fellow of AAAI, AAAS, ACM, IEEE, SIAM, and AMS. Holds honorary doctorates from 8 universities and is the author of over 600 technical papers and has received many prestigious awards. Prof. Vardi is a senior editor of communications of the ACM after serving as its editor-in-chief for a decade. Let's welcome Prof. Vardi.
Okay. It's a pleasure to be with you here today, and let's do the magic screen sharing. And we are in business. Okay, so I see there have already been previous talks in this series about the implications of AI, ethical aspects of AI, and these talks fall exactly in the same line of looking at the ethical aspect of AI and societal implication of AI. And in particular, I would like to take a look at the implication for AI for something that one of the most important things for people, jobs. Can they make a living? And I'd like to go back and kind of go back to the very beginning of AI, the really foundation of AI. Many people point to a paper by Alan Turing in 1950. Now, the paper is very famous for something became name of a movie, The Imitation Game. But the Imitation Game is just one aspect of the paper. The paper really, the paper is about is a philosophical paper. It appeared in a philosophy journal, Mind, and it asks, can machine be intelligent? And Turing goes through all the arguments against machine intelligence, and he responds to them, I would say convincingly, one after the other, and he concludes, yes, it's possible to have intelligent machines, and he makes a prediction. I believe that at the end of the century, the use of words and general educated opinion will have altered so much that one will be able to speak of machine thinking without expecting to be contradiction. End of the century would mean the year 2000. Well, the year 2000 came and went. Now it's 2020. Do I think that the laptop on which I'm giving my presentation, do I think this laptop is thinking? Not really, just a machine. So perhaps Turing was a bit too optimistic in the timing. And this optimism was not only Turing. Many of the early pioneers were very optimistic. They thought this intelligent business, how hard can it be? So, for example, winning in chess was predicted in 1958 to take 10 years. Didn't happen. In fact, it took about, from that point, 40 years later. Marvin Minsky in 1967 wrote, within a generation, the problem of creating artificial intelligence would substantially be solved. Again, generation, maybe 30 years, again, would be the end of the century. Didn't happen. We're still trying to develop AI. Nobody thinks that we are about to solve it in the next 5 years. So because of this early optimism, there are also periods that became known as AI winters. These are periods where progress was very slow, and for researchers, even worse, funding was scarce. And these two things go together, scarce funding, slow progress. Perhaps many people point to 1997 as a point in which AI turned around in some sense. Suddenly there was an inflection point, because suddenly there was a huge accomplishment. Deep Blue beat Kasparov in a 6-game tournament. IBM invited me to attend this tournament. They paid my way to New York, from Houston to New York. They paid for the hotel. I couldn't say no. I watched the first game. Kasparov was white in the first game, and he won the first game fairly convincingly. And I concluded, I believe that one day computers will win in chess, but I guess I thought to myself, the time has not come yet. And I decided to cut my visit to New York short and fly back to Houston. I did not stay for the second game, to my eternal regret, because in the second game, Deep Blue was white. White is perceived to have the advantage. You can go on an attack if you are white. And Kasparov played defensive game, and he laid a very elaborate trap to Deep Blue. And Deep Blue not only did not fall into the trap, but extracted itself from the trap with such a brilliant sequence of moves that Kasparov, for 20 years, he kept saying, no, this would have been some a team of international grandmaster must have been playing against him. Only in 2017, he wrote a book and he finally conceded that yes, he was beat by a machine. Here you see Kasparov walking away from the second game, very upset, obviously, and he never recovered from that. And he lost the tournament. This was 1997. It took almost 15 years before there was another big milestone. Again, IBM. It was Watson, and Watson defeated the two greatest Jeopardy players, Bud Ryder and Ken Jennings, by a significant margin. Now, while chess was clearly just a matter at the end of a brute force computation, Jeopardy felt different. Jeopardy felt that it's about natural language and understanding nuance of history and culture. You know, if I ask you about a airport in Chicago that relates to a battle in World War II, you really have to think very cleverly and to think about Midway Airport relating to the Battle of Midway. So that felt for many people that this turned a corner. But perhaps the most significant one was 4 years ago when Google's AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol in Go. Now, why is it considered to be so impressive? Because to mechanize Go is much harder than to mechanize chess. If you look at the board, you see the board is larger than a chessboard. The dimension, are larger. And there are only two pieces, white and black. So there are many, many more configurations. And for years, Go was considered beyond the capability of computer games. And then DeepMind, a company that Google bought, combined three search technique. This what IBM did with Watson was three search technique. But they also used machine learning. That was the key new element that DeepMind brought into the picture is machine learning. So DeepMind played AlphaGo. DeepMind is a company. The program AlphaGo played, first of all, digested all published games of Go, hundreds of thousands of published games, and then played millions of games against itself to develop intuition, whatever intuition is. What does it mean, intuition? How does a Go master play a game? There are no specific rules here. A Go master has a feeling. Is this a good configuration or a bad configuration? And what do I do? And AlphaGo was able to develop such intuition by using machine learning techniques. So what is intuition? Intuition is that you know what to do, but you can't really say why you do it the way you do it. In fact, this was known as the Polanyi paradox, going to a paper by the philosopher Karl Polanyi from 1966. He said, we know more than we can tell. You know, many people know how to ride bicycle. But suppose I tell you, explain to me how you balance yourself on a bicycle. And the answer is, I don't know, I just do. You cannot explain it. So Karl Polanyi didn't talk about bicycle, he talked about driving. He said, a driver cannot explain exactly. You are approaching a red light. You are pushing the brake to slow down. How do you know how much to push the brake? It's a non-trivial control problem. And the answer is you just know. You just experience. You have learned what is the right amount of pressure. Your eyes looked at the gauge, your brain somehow combined the speed, the distance, and you know what pressure to apply. And you cannot explain it. And so Polanyi argued, how can we ever have artificial intelligence driving cars if we cannot program cars to do it? And now that machine learning can learn intuition, we have an answer. We're going to use machine learning to learn to drive. And the automation of driving has really been a grand challenge for AI now for many years. In 2005, DARPA had a grand challenge of driving out in wilderness. And in 2003, they had a competition, and no car was able to complete more than 5 miles, 7 miles. But 2 years later, everybody learned, and Stanford had an autonomous vehicle that drove over 130 miles in an unrehearsed desert trail. Now, desert is easier than to do it in an urban setting where you have traffic and signs and kids crossing the street. But in 2007, there was a DARPA urban challenge, and CMU was able to fill the vehicle They drove 55 miles while adhering to traffic hazards and traffic laws, not causing any accident. And now this is just from recently from the news. Waymo started testing its driverless trucks in Texas. So huge effort now on automation of driving. Now, let's imagine that we are successful in automating driving. This will be a huge revolution. Now, how long will it take? There is a debate. There are lots of money is at stake here. There are hundreds of companies that are investing in it, all the way from the Waymo and the Uber and the car companies and many startups. Market is estimated in trillions of dollars. I think that if it will happen, and people debate whether it's a matter of 5 years or 25 years, I'm more of the pessimist, but it will happen eventually. One could argue that this will be the new transportation revolution. To put in historical context, just considered what are the revolutions that we went through in transportation. Not that many. About 7,000 years ago, the invention of the wheel. Invention of the wheel changed history. The Egyptians would not have been able to build the pyramids if they didn't have the wheel to carry heavy loads on them. So in some sense, you can think that when we think of the pyramid is kind of the beginning of human culture, non-trivial culture. Well, that's due to the wheel. Then, about 1,500 years later, the domestication of the horse somewhere in Central Asia. Again, another huge event for humanity. Until then, if you wanted to go somewhere, you had to walk there. If you want to get somewhere, you had to go there step by step. And now suddenly there was a shortcut. You can ride a horse to go somewhere. And to understand what you can do in a horse, the Mongols built the largest land empire ever on a horseback. They went all the way from Mongolia, all the way to the Middle East and Europe on a horseback. So domestication of the horse was a huge event for humanity. And after that, really nothing happens in land transportation for many years. Things happen in marine transportation. I'll skip that. But in naval transportation, nothing happened until the 19th century when the steam locomotive is being invented. And if you want to understand what did the steam locomotive do to America, imagine the year is 1800. You're in New York and you want to go to San Francisco. What is the shortest way from New York to San Francisco? The answer is the shortest way is to go on a boat and to go all around South America, because the Panama Canal does not exist yet. So it's going to be 3 weeks on ocean to get to San Francisco, but it is going to be faster than going on a wagon from New York to San Francisco. So the steam locomotive enabled the United States to create what we call a continental country, the transcontinental railway, which bound together the East, the Midwest, and the Pacific all together. That's the story. That's the outcome of the steam locomotive. And then about 100 years later, another huge industrial event, the Ford Model T, rolls off the manufacturing line. Now, automobile already existed about 50 years before that, starting in Europe, but it was the first mass-produced, mass-consumed automobile. And that's changed. That was the 20th century was the century of the automobile. Gave us traffic jams, and look at this. I don't know where it is. I mean, it's kind of insane, but that's what happened when you drive the automobile. It gave us huge, humongous. This is, I think, the Disneyland parking lot. The automobile, I think, was the most significant industrial product of the 20th century, because it is shaped the urban geography. Look at Houston. Houston is a post-automobile city. So it is incredibly widespread because the automobiles enable it. The automobile gave rise to a mighty American industry. We forget. Now we think of the tech industry as the biggest industry. But if you go to 1950, Silicon Valley of the United States is in Detroit, and the car companies are the big tech of the day. And this mighty industry make the US a superpower. That's how we end up winning World War II, because we had such a strong industrial base. And just think of how many movies the car plays a significant role in so many movies. This is even in science fiction movies. This is, I think, Mad Max. This is El Choro for Mad Max. It's going to be somehow about automobiles. Even in the future, the automobile will be the center of it. And now, all of this is likely to change. And one reason this is likely to change is because the automobile is a very destructive product. Every year, more than 1 million people get killed in car crashes. Even the phrase car accident is a marketing phrase. We have been conditioned to say car accidents, so it sounds like act of God. But this is the societal cost is huge, estimated more than $500 billion per year, affecting mostly young people. Young people are in fact, if the audience here is mostly indeed youth, then I would say your biggest risk in life is a car crash. So, and car crashes are caused by whom? Look at the screen. Look at the gallery view. We are the cause of car crashes. More than 90%, about 95% of car crashes are caused by human behavior, by human error, driver behavior. All kind of different things, from driving too fast to driving too carelessly. So, as I mentioned, there is a huge investment now in automation of driving. And I said there is a debate how long it's going to take, but there's no question that at some point we will succeed doing it. When we will succeed automating driving, this will be a huge industrial disruption. For example, cars are a very inefficient product. Cars, I'm not talking about what happened now. Since March, I think I filled up my car twice. But even in normal time, my car is idle about, I drive my car about an hour a day. The rest of the time it is idle. It's nice. I like to have the car there when I need it, but I really only drive it to work and back and maybe a few errands. So very inefficient product. Whole industry will be disrupted. Suppose you need a liver because you drank too much and you need a liver. Where do you get a liver? Somebody has to be killed in a car crash for someone to get a liver. What happens if we stop car crashes? Where are we going to get organs for transplants? So this is going to be a huge societal change, but nevertheless, it will save maybe 1 million lives per year. It will liberate many people who are now homebound, and they will be able to become mobile. So this will have huge societal benefits. But now we need to think about one outcome, which is what will happen to the drivers. So to understand why this is such an important question, in more than half the states, the most common job category is a truck driver. It doesn't mean that the majority of people are truck drivers. It means that if you look at all the jobs and how many people in jobs, the job with the largest group of people is truck drivers. And this is even before the pandemic. This is data from 2014. Think of now, what happens when I have not been to a grocery store now for 6 months. Every day, some other truck comes by, or SUV or a truck comes by and delivers something to my house. All these people are driving for a living. So there are 4 million truck and taxi drivers in the United States. There are about another 1 million gig driver, Uber and Lyft and the like. But it's estimated that about 15 million jobs, their main thing they do is driving. For example, if you think of a postal delivery worker, mostly what they do, they drive around. So driving is a huge source of jobs for people. But if you can automate driving, it's not only driving you automate, the whole supply chain. Cargo ships are much easier to automate in some sense than cars, because you don't have to worry about traffic laws and kids playing with ball on the street. Ports are already 95+% automated. Trucking will be the first thing to be automated before the personal cars will be automated. Warehouses are largely already automated. The hard thing, moving things in the warehouse is already automated. Putting things in packaging is still hard to do, but companies such as Amazon is working very hard on solving this problem. Getting the package from the car to the door, that's a drone can do it fairly easily. So clearly, automation of driving will imply massive loss of jobs. So we can ask, okay, what will happen to these people who lose their jobs? And economists typically tell you nothing to worry about. They will find other jobs. There will be other jobs. And that's what I want to discuss. Will there be other jobs? So, in fact, there is a debate about it between economists. Paul Krugman is a Nobel Prize winning economist. He's also a columnist, well-known columnist in New York Times. And here is what he wrote about automation in 2012. Can innovation and progress really hurt large number of workers, maybe even workers in general? The truth is that it can, and serious economists have been aware of this possibility for almost 2 centuries. By 2019, Paul Krugman dismisses automation. Democrats, he wrote, avoid the robot rabbit hole. The automation obsession is an escaping fantasy. So who is right? Krugman of 2012 or Krugman of 2019? This is a topic on which almost every month there is a new study. McKinsey, Gartner, Oxford University Press, OECD, PricewaterhouseCoopers. So in 2018, Technology Review, MIT Technology Review magazine decided, let's take all these studies and come up with a consensus. And they realized they couldn't come up with a consensus. There were so many different opinions. They concluded there are about as many opinions there are experts. So there's really no consensus on what will happen in the future because of automation. So why is it we cannot reach consensus? There is a Danish proverb that says predictions are difficult, especially about the future. But I think the Danes got it wrong. Predictions are easy, especially about the future. We can all make predictions. If I make a prediction about what will happen in 50 years, go find me in 50 years. It's correct predictions that are difficult to make. So I don't have a crystal ball. It's very difficult to make predictions. I'll come back at the end why it is so difficult to make predictions. But I want to spend the next 15 minutes or so is not talking about the future, talking about the past, because the past is the best guide that we have to the future. And I'm going to take as a case study US manufacturing. Why the US? Partly because US is a very large, it's about 20% of the world GDP, and it's also a very free market economy. It's a laissez-faire economy. Manufacturing is the largest sector of the economy. If you listen to some politician, you think there's no more manufacturing in the United States. Everything went to China or Mexico. This is total BS. Excuse me. Manufacturing is 18% of the GDP. It is bigger than the next large sector, which is finance, insurance, real estate, rental, and leasing. All combined is only 17%. So it's a huge sector of the economy. Just to put it in a global context to see how big it is, China is the biggest. China has the biggest share of global manufacturing. It's about close to 30% of all manufacturing. The US is number 2. But the US is about Japan and Germany and South Korea combined. And we think of Japan, Germany, and South Korea all as manufacturing giants. Combine them, that's where the US is. So the US is a huge manufacturing power. But here is the next slide, which I think for many people, when they see it, it's a wow slide, wow. So you see here 2 things, 2 trends. One is output. And output is what's called real output, adjusted for inflation. And that's the orange line. And you can see that it's a line that goes up. And when does it go down? When there is a recession, it goes down. So you can see it went down in the early 2000s, and then it went down again in the financial crisis of 2008. Whenever there is a recession, demand goes down, output goes down. But now take a look at the blue line, a navy blue line, which is employment. And you can see there that when it comes to employment, it used to be, it went down dramatically. It used to be that, in fact, if you go farther back, you find a period where 25% of all workers worked in manufacturing. And you see that over the last 20 plus years, it has gone down. And it is, you know, it is, again, it goes down more in a recession, recovers a little bit, but you can see the recovery does not take you to where it was before. So now fewer than 10% of US workers work in manufacturing. So huge decline in the number of jobs in manufacturing. This is one of the big stories of what happened in the past generation, is that manufacturing jobs disappeared. But notice the orange line shows that we are still making tons of stuff. So how can we make more stuff with fewer people? It's all about productivity. Manufacturing productivity has, for example, between 1997 and 2010, or period of less than 15 years, productivity has doubled. Why are manufacturing workers so productive? What is it? Are they moving faster? No, it's all about automation. Go, after the talk and go to your favorite web search engine and type Tesla Model S factory floor. And what you see here, what I show you here is a video, is a still, but you'll find beautiful videos of what the Tesla factory look like. And you see there is no human there. This is all done today by machines. In fact, this is called dark factory floor because the machine don't really need light. The only reason they have light so they can take pictures and bring visitors. So this is building cars today is fully automated. Not everything is automated. I'll talk a little more about when do you automate, okay? But many jobs have disappeared due to automation. And now we can say, okay, we look at the United States, manufacturing has automated significantly, millions of jobs have disappeared. What happened? Did the manufacturing workers find other jobs? So now we're going to look at 4 macroeconomic numbers, which is productivity and GDP and employment and income. And for a generation after World War II, these 4 numbers went together so much so that people thought there is economic load. If you increase productivity, then GDP will grow and jobs will be created, income will rise. Looks like this became known as the Great Coupling. Everything went together. And then something happened around, somewhere around in the late 70s or around 1980, and this number started to diverge. What you see here, the productivity still goes up and GDP goes up. But we are generating fewer jobs and income has flattened. So just because you increase productivity does not translate that workers benefit. The people who own the factories may benefit, but the workers may not benefit. And to see it more starkly, let's look at what happened to white men with no college degree. So this is what we call working class white men. And what you can see here is between 1975 and 2015, their income overall, the real income after adjusting for inflation, has gone down. So if you want to understand today's politics, if you want to understand why is it you see a rally and you see lots of angry white men kind of shaking their fist practically. We used to see this picture by the Middle East, people who say death to America, death to America. And now we're seeing this very angry white men in the United States. You ask, what are they angry about? Well, if over a generation your income goes down, yours and your friends and your whole town, then you're going to be upset. So regardless what you think of different political candidates, we need to understand what is driving today's politics, a lot of economic frustration. Now, remember, you heard a lot about the economy and how before the pandemic, before COVID-19, unemployment was at historical low. But unemployment is a meaningless metric for the economy. And it's meaningless because a politician of all parties always want unemployment to be low. So unemployment, the Bureau of Labor Statistics was forced to redefine unemployment. And it only means the percentage of people who are looking for jobs and not finding jobs. So if people stop looking for jobs, unemployment goes down. It doesn't measure how many people are working. So labor economists pay more attention to something called labor force participation. How many people are working or looking for jobs? And here you see all the way from 1960 to about 2015, Again, I want to factor out what happened with the pandemic, because that's a unique event, and I want to look at the bigger picture. What you see here are men between 25 and 54. So these are called prime age males. Why men? Well, because for women, the picture will be more complicated. In the 60s, they start joining the workforce. So you'll see, early on, you'll see a rising trend. So it's a more nuanced picture. By focusing on men, I get a simpler picture. Also, by focusing on 25 to 54, you take out the schooling period, and you take even out early retirement. It's all about just, these are a group of people that used to work. You see, if you go back to 1960, 97% of these people used to be in the labor force. And this has gone down to 88% over a period of about 50 years. And it is worse when you look at it by education. Here you see that if you have a bachelor degree, and that's about 1/3 of the population has bachelor degree, then labor force participation for men went down a little bit, but not a lot. But if you have high school or less, it went down a lot. When you combine unemployment, so people who are looking for a job and not finding jobs, even before the pandemic, the statistic was that about 1 in 5 working class men is not working. 1 in 5. This is incredible. This is what we think of a country in the middle of deep depression. 20% people are not working. And people call it social calamities. All kind of implication when 20% of the men are not working. So this is the story of the political story of this country is one number: 20% of men, working class men, not working. So let's zoom a little bit deeper and understand what does automation do to the labor force. Because you think, okay, destroy jobs, but this, of course, it also creates new jobs. There are all kind of new jobs now, you know, website designer, interaction manager, all kind of fancy schmancy new jobs. So what happened? So labor economists divide, they look at the skill spectrum, and you can think of the skill spectrum roughly the salary spectrum, and they divide it into the low skill jobs and the middle skill jobs and the high skill jobs. And you can see that in 1983, we had about 15% in the low skill jobs, 26% in the high skill jobs, occupations, and the majority, 60%, was in middle skills. For example, manufacturing is considered middle skill job. At the very low skill, think of the busboy. We are very, very far from being to automate something very simple, cleaning tables in a restaurant. Well, assuming a restaurant full of people, okay? Cleaning table in a restaurant. It may seem like a very simple job. Every teenager can do it, but you need dexterity and agility and situational awareness. No, we were very far from being able to build such a robot, and it will be hugely expensive. And we pay the busboy minimum wage, so there's no economic incentive to try to automate it. What you see is that by the time we went to 2012, the low skill occupation have grown a little bit, but not by much. We can say no significant change. The high skill jobs have increased. Many more jobs now require high skill. Many more jobs now require higher cognitive skills. The middle skill segment of the pie, of the job pie, has shrunk. And that means that there are many more people now. What can they do? You can say they can upskill themselves. Well, if you take a truck driver that lost his job, and tell the truck drivers, we don't have job driving trucks, but we need jobs for people who write software for automated trucks. Well, a truck driver is not so easily going to upskill him or herself, mostly him, to writing software for automated trucks. So that truck driver can try to side skill, that is, go to another middle skill jobs. But the pie, this is a smaller segment of the pie now. There are fewer middle skill jobs. So what will happen? This truck driver may go to low skill job, for example. You can go to retail. If you go to retail, you go from manufacturing to retail, you lose about 50% of your income. And some people will say, screw it, I'm not willing to do it. And they just drop out of the labor force. And that's why we saw that fewer and fewer men are in the labor force. So this is the story of what's been happening. And this translates not only to job, this translates to income. So if you look at, again, we look at 50 years and we look at real hourly wages, what do we see? We see that people with advanced degree have seen their income rise in real dollars. People with advanced degree means post-baccalaureate. People with college degrees saw their income rise. If you only have an associate degree, you barely kept even. If you only have high school or less, you have lost ground. So again, part of the story of our society, and the reason we're looking at our society, and it's very, very polarized right now, well, the polarization is very much by people with advanced and college degrees, educated professional, it's about 1/3 of the population, and the people who do not have college degree, and these people have been feeling left behind economically. Now, I put this data, and this data, mostly there is agreement that this data is solid. People sometimes debate whether we calculate inflation the right way, and calculate inflation is incredibly important here. But by and large, most people say, yes, this is the correct situation. But what is the cause? I kind of implied by juxtaposition, by correlation, that the cause is automation. But this has been a matter of debate. For example, in 2014, there was a poll, and about 2,000 economists asked to agree or disagree with this thesis. Information technology and automation are a central reason why median wages have been stagnant in the US over the past decade, despite rising productivity. In 2014, 43% agreed, but 30% were uncertain. They said, we don't know. And 28% either disagreed or strongly disagreed. So it was not, you couldn't say that this is the consensus of economists that automation is the cause. But in 2017, an important study was issued that looked urban area by urban area and showed that the more robots are deployed in urban area, the more jobs are lost. And that study convinced most economists that this is really, that automation is directly related ultimately to job loss. Job loss is complicated, and I'll talk about some more complication later, what happened in job market. But the data from 2017 was strong enough that after it came out, Laura Tyson, who is a distinguished economist at UC Berkeley, wrote, among economists, however, the consensus is that about 80% of the loss in US manufacturing job over the last 3 decades was the result of labor saving and productivity enhancing technological change, with trade coming a distant second. And I'll come back to talk about how come we hear a lot about trade and so little about automation. I'll come talk about it in a little while. But again, by now, most economists says the cause is automation. Now let's take a broad historical view, and let's see why some economists have been skeptical of this for a long time. And they say, well, because the technology destroying job is not a new story. It's been happening since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, so it's by now 150 years, okay? This is going on. Always technology destroy jobs, but there are new jobs created. It used to be that most people used to work on the farms, and then we built farm machinery, and what happened? Many people moved to the factories. They said that's what's happening. People go from one job to other jobs. But how do people cope with automation? They have to find a new niche where they are better than machines. As machine gets better and better and smarter, are we sure that we can always race ahead of the machines? There was a book that in fact was published, Racing Against the Machines. This is a race. The machines are getting better. Are we getting smarter? Well, I don't know about you guys. I'm not getting smarter. So what happened when machines are gradually able to do more and more things that we used to be able to better than machine? What is our competitive advantage? And so you cannot just say, well, we will always do something better than machines. So, and also it's important to realize there are phenomena that are called tipping point. What is a tipping point? Well, when I was a child, we would buy raw milk. And my mother would ask me to watch raw milk. And I would look at it and nothing would happen. And I'm a very impatient person, full confession. And I would get distracted and start looking elsewhere, and poof, the milk will suddenly boil all over and it's a big mess. And that's a tipping point. Physicists would call it phase transition. And Malcolm Gladwell, a well-known writer, wrote a whole book described tipping point phenomenon, where suddenly quantitative change lead to suddenly to qualitative change. And in human history, the mother of all tipping points is the Industrial Revolution. Imagine you're an economist in the year 1700, and somebody asks you to predict economic growth for the next 100 years. You're going to look at data going back 2,000 years, and you say economic growth is nothing. It's very marginal. It's a very small thing, maybe 0.1% per year at most. Of course, what's going to happen is in the middle of the 17th century, the Industrial Revolution, the 18th century Industrial Revolution would start, and suddenly we'll have exponential growth, exponential economic growth. We are today fabulously richer than people were 150 years ago, inconceivably richer because of the Industrial Revolution. So are we convinced that this cannot happen again with artificial intelligence? So Wassily Leontiev, a Nobel Prize winning economist, wrote a paper in 1983 where he basically said that point. There could be another kind of what people are now talking, the fourth or the fifth industrial revolutions. And he said, imagine a debate between two horses in the year 1910. So these horses are in the meadow eating grass, and one horse said to the other one, have you heard about the Ford Model T? I'm very worried about Ford Model T because what jobs will be left for horses once automobiles are widespread? And the other horse says, well, look, technology always destroy jobs for horses, but it creates new jobs for horses. So there will always be new jobs for horses that we cannot even imagine. So who was right? The neoclassical horse that was not worried, or the neo-Luddite horse that was very worried? Well, we are now, we have the advantage of hindsight. So we know that equal population in the United States, horses and mules, peaked at around 1915. And it's been going down since. And today there are no jobs for horses. Horses are glorified pets. Even when horse racing, there's not really a job. Again, they call it to entertain humans. And when police ride horses, it's only to intimidate humans. But there are really no serious jobs for horses. So this is a significant change. There are no more jobs for horses. So whoever thinks that technology always destroy jobs and create jobs, look at what happened to horses. So, and then people say, look, but the Industrial Revolution happened and everything turned out okay for us. Well, the answer is it took us 200 years to adapt to the Industrial Revolution. How did we adapt? We created the modern social welfare states. All the things that you take for granted right now about our socioeconomic life evolved over the past 200 years. The maturation, the full maturation of the social welfare state is post-World War II, roughly the 1960s. Many of the legislation in the United States goes back to the 1960s. Partly what was driving this is that Western countries saw what happened if you don't take care of working class people. There were two communist revolutions. If you do the total, how many people died, it's about close to 100 million people died in these two revolutions. And Western countries had to evolve to avoid having such revolutions. And if we forget how stormy working relations were in this country. Here is the Pittsburgh Railroad Riot. Workers put, the railroad station is on fire. Police come, open fires on workers. Think about it. 60 people get killed when police open fires on people. We had very stormy working labor relations, and eventually we had to adapt to make union legal, and all bunch of laws. I'll show you again what took, how did we adapt to the Industrial Revolution. So the other people say, well, technology destroys jobs, but it also creates new jobs. These are both true. Technology destroys some jobs, it creates new jobs. What's the relationship between them? Well, the answer is it depends. There's no guarantee that the technology will create enough jobs to compensate for the lost jobs. And if it does, what about the skill level? I mentioned before the example of the truck driver who is told, okay, now you can become a programmer for autonomous trucks. Well, it's a whole different level of skill levels. Okay, truck drivers usually have high school education to write software automated trucks. We're talking people with bachelor and master and even PhD. Even location. Tell the miners in Appalachia that they can become solar panel installer in Silicon Valley. They can't afford to live in Silicon Valley. They can't move because of the gap in real estate prices. So there are the whole bunch of issues that interfere. We have our people are not gadgets. You can say, oh, well, this job is gone. There is a new job. Go do it. There's a whole bunch of other issues. Just to make it even more extreme, a colleague of mine, very smart guy, wrote in 2017, what is the problem? There shouldn't be any problem. Why? We have an aging society. There are more and more people who need to be taken care of. So this is a booming job category, caregivers. So all these people who lost jobs in manufacturing can become caregivers. Again, people are not widgets. First of all, caregiving pays half of what manufacturing used to pay. Also, most people in manufacturing were men. Caregiving is culturally what people call a pink-collar job, typically held by women. Now, again, we can say there is no shame in caregiving, but it's not an easy adjustment either for employees or for employers. People who are used to doing physical work on the line, suddenly tell them, go wash, take care of older people. It's a very difficult cultural adjustment. Remember, people are not widgets. Now, how come that this should be a major topic of discussion? I mean, Trump did talk about manufacturing, but he only talks about trade, and we know that trade is not the issue. We know that the real issue is how manufacturing has changed and become much more automated. Obama, in the last year of his presidency, talked a lot about automation. He was not running for any position, but he said, because of automation, you need fewer and fewer people to make more and more stuff. And he said, we need to examine the social compact. Social compact is the set of norms, how we conduct our socioeconomic life. But Clinton did not talk about automation either. I'll come back to who did talk about automation. So there are many, many things that we take for granted, but they have taken, as I said, they have taken almost 200 years to evolve. The right to strike, the right to unionize, abolish child labor, 40 hours work week, equal pay, health and safety laws. In this year's election, there was one candidate, Andrew Yang. He was running for the Democratic nomination, and he talked about universal basic income, and he did much better than people expected. There was something called the Young Gang. Lots of him became very popular with lots of young people, but I mean, he did make it. He put UBI. Typically, people talk about UBI. He put it on the table. We will see what happens. We have election next week. Anybody's guess what's going to happen after next week. So I want to quote Jason Fullman. Jason Fullman was chair of the Council of Economic Affairs Advisors of President Obama. And he wrote a report about the economic impact of AI. And his conclusion was, my worry is not that this time could be different when it comes to AI. Many people say, well, in the past, it wasn't a problem, but maybe it's different this time. He said, no. He said, look at the trend that I just described to you over the past half an hour. Suppose you just continue this trend. Suppose that labor force participation continue to decline at the same rate. Right now, it's 20% of working class men not working. What happens when it's 30%? What is the social impact of that? So there is a huge societal policy challenge for us. We need to examine education, taxation, trade, housing. We have a huge societal challenge. And so far as a society, we have not started to address it. And one reason we have not started to address it is because even though over the past 40 years, automation has a very harsh impact on middle and working class Americans, the people who develop policies don't see that. They don't see what happened in small town where the factory automated. William Galston wrote a column in the Wall Street Journal in 2016, and he said, educated professionals, including most politicians, live in economic and cultural bubble. And they all too easily assume that what they see and hear around them represent the entire country. So the reason for this country is polarized is because we have the people who create policies don't fully appreciate the pain of the people who are different than them. Now, of course, it is important to ask, what would COVID do? Because this is a whole other talk. One could talk about BC and AC, before COVID and after COVID. What is clear is that COVID is going to accelerate this trend. Why? Because we now understand that maybe we have done too much globalization. There's the issue of resilience. You know, we couldn't get enough PPEs because they're all made in China. So we will see more manufacturing coming back to this country. But to be competitive, it will be with automation. It will not necessarily create new jobs. More manufacturing does not translate to more manufacturing jobs, as I've shown you. Also, we now understand, now that we've seen this pandemic, we understand pandemics happen. We have to get ready for them. People are fragile. Machines are robust. Machine can continue to work during pandemic. So this is another incentive to automate. McKinsey wrote, Japan is aging. What are they going to do? Automate. And again, here is another study. COVID-19 may accelerate automation of jobs as employer invest in technology to safeguard against current and potential future pandemics. So the pandemic will not slow this trend. To the contrary, it will accelerate it. But I want to finish talking about the social picture, and I've already kind of made my talk somewhat political, and I want to make it even more political, even though I'm not going to tell you. I hope that if you're 18, you're going to vote. I'm not going to tell you whom to vote, but you should vote the right way. But partly I talk about the social divide. And there have been several articles and books that have come out of the last couple of years about the meritocracy that some people are arguing is the new aristocracy. An article from the Atlantic Monthly of June 2018, and it declared that the 9.9% top 9.9% is a new American aristocracy. Why? They want to take out the 0.1%, which are just really people who are fabulously rich. He said they are not the problem. The problem is the next 10%. I disagree with that. I think it's the next 20 or 25%. I said it's educated professionals, and it's the gap between educated professionals and the rest of the country. And this was also David Brooks, a columnist in the New York Times, also wrote about it. He wrote, the new meritocratic aristocracy has come to look like every other aristocracy. The members of the educated class use their intellectual, financial, and social advantages to pass on privilege to the children, creating hereditary elite that is even more insulated from the rest of society. I'm sure you all heard about the admission scandals, but even beyond that, here is a picture of, take a look at the demographic of certain American colleges and university. And it looks how many people are from the top 1% versus the bottom 60%. And you can see that Wash U, over 20% of the students are from the top 1%. So this is really, yes, they have 6.1% from the bottom, but this is really an embodiment of the new aristocracy. Rice, I just want to say where I am, Rice is somewhat better. It's 95 in terms of its economic diversity. We have less than 10% of the top 1% and almost 20% of the bottom 20%. But it's still, we are very different. The profile at Rice is still very different. The profile will be in, I don't know, the Arkansas State University. So elite colleges and university are very much maintain the new aristocracy. And again, part of the story that we've seen in this country is growing inequality. So if you look here at the top 1%, the bottom, it's the orange line, and the green is the bottom 50%. You go back to 1962, the top 1% earn about 12% of the income. And the bottom 50% earn about 18% of the income. What happened over 50 years? There is a reversal. The top 1% now earns about 20% of the income, and the bottom 50% earn about 12% of the income. Growing inequality. Now you might think that this is some kind of an economic law because of technology, and we saw the growing part of the pie that have to do with high skill jobs. But this is the picture in Western Europe. Similar advanced culture, technological advanced societies, but different policies. So even then you can see that the bottom 50% have gone down and the top 1% have gone up, but nothing like what happened in the United States. This growing inequality is why our society, democracy, is now at risk. A society where there is too much inequality, it's very hard to maintain democracy. Unfortunately, this sorry situation of affair is the legacy of my generation. So people have, a few years ago, pollsters have gone and asked people about inequality. Turns out in the United States, people don't want full equality. They think that people have different talent, different level of energy. They understand that some people will be richer than other people. So you ask them, if you divide the population to quantile, what should be the distribution of income, of wealth? And people says, well, you know, they think that the top 20% should own maybe 35%. And the chart at the bottom show what people think is the ideal distribution. So it's not total equality. It is skewed, but moderately so. Then you ask people, okay, what do you think is the real distribution? And they understand that the real distribution is much more skewed than the ideal distribution. And that's what you see in the middle. So they think that the top 20% own 60%. What they don't know is the top 20% own more than 80% of the wealth. People have no idea the level of inequality that we have in this country. So I want to close with a quote that I like very much. And I'm trying to, again, this is youth AI. I'm trying to pass this great task to you because I said my generation have failed to address this. What is the task? It is your duty to participate in a great task of modern times, to solve on the basis of justice and righteousness the problem presented by the contrasts and evils of the present organization of society. Where does this beautiful quote come from? The 1885 Pittsburgh Platform of Reform Judaism. But you don't have to be Jewish, you don't have to be Reform to say yes, that a dedication to make the world a better place, it's a good goal for life. It doesn't mean that you cannot do well in life yourself, but you should also try to make the world a better place. I think the pandemic gives us a chance. Let me finish with quoting Farid Zakaria, who just wrote a couple of weeks ago in the Washington Post. The pandemic upended the present, but it's given us a chance to remake the future. What happened is all kinds of faults in American society have been exposed. We could have imagined before that we're doing great. Now we realize how the combination of the pandemic and the political storm that we're living through show us what a difficult situation is. We have a chance to remake the future. Let's not blow it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Vardi, for that amazing talk.